Okay, welcome back to this biology module. Hope you guys are doing great. I'm doing well myself. And today we are going to continue our discussion in describing exactly or in defining exactly what an organism is. Okay, we started out with this requirement that an organism requires energy and nutrients. Okay, so that's the first bit of being an organism. Number two, what's the second bit of being an organism? The second requirement of being an organism is that an organism can sense and respond to change. Okay, an organism can sense and respond to change. It doesn't seem like much at first, but if you think about it, this is an essential piece to maintaining continued life in an ever-changing environment. Okay, so this is essential to maintain life in an ever-changing environment. Okay, this makes sense, right? If you have some sort of organism and suddenly there is a change in, for example, the amount of acid that's in the water, this organism should be able to sense that change and respond to the change by moving away from that source of toxicity for the organism itself. If it can't do that, it's not going to survive so well. Okay, and within this sense and respond to change category, there's something called homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis is the process by which an organism keeps its internal conditions favorable to survival. Okay, so keeps internals favorable to survival. Okay, this is how an organism regulates itself. For example, humans have a homeostasis or a homeostatic ability to keep our temperature at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. This is homeostasis. This is what the rest of our body works with, and this is why we are able to continue to survive, because our bodies, our organs, all of our systems together work to create this homeostatic environment. Okay, so that's the second part of being an organism. The third part, or the third requirement, is that an organism must use what's called DNA. I know that you guys have heard of DNA before. Let's get into a little bit of what it actually is, okay? Actually, it's fascinating because DNA has very little variation from animal to plant to everything else. DNA doesn't change hardly at all. It's the same molecule, and it performs the same basic function in all living organisms. Okay, so DNA, let's talk about a little bit about what it actually means and what it's called. Okay, DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, simply put, it is a glorified molecule. It's a very large molecule, but it's still considered a molecule. Okay. Essentially, DNA encodes the function that it performs within our body is that it encodes cellular function. Okay, it encodes cellular function, such as, for example, metabolism, growth, development, reproduction, etc., etc. Okay, so it encodes all sorts, actually every type of cellular function that there is encoded by DNA. It's all contained within the DNA that's in every cell within our body. Yeah, and another thing that's interesting about DNA is that individuals of every population are alive because of shared DNA. Okay? You are alive because of shared DNA. An orangutan looks like an orangutan. An orangutan looks like an orangutan because it has man, write orangutan 5 times fast. Because it has orangutan DNA. Okay, simply put, all species within a certain population look, act, feel, behave the same way because of inherited DNA. Every organism inherits their DNA from its parents. Okay? So it inherits its DNA from its parents. This is why an orangutan looks like an orangutan, and this is why all organisms receive, and this is why all orangutans look the same, okay? Because they're literally getting their DNA from their parents. Their parents have the same DNA. Oh, wow, that's an N. Okay, and of course they then pass that DNA on to their offspring. And so all of the things within a certain population look, feel, act pretty much the same. Okay, all orangutans, this is true, but all organisms inherit their DNA from their parents. Okay, this is true of all organisms, not just orangutans, not just humans, all of us. Okay, and DNA, it turns out, is the basis of similarity in form and function. Okay, so any type of form and function similarities within a population are all due to DNA. However, small variations or small differences in this molecule cause diversity within that population. Okay, not all orangutans are going to look exactly the same as each other. They're going to look very similar, but it's not going to be exact. And this all comes down to the fact that anytime you pass on this inherited information, this encoded molecule from one generation to the next, it's not a perfect share. It's not a perfect thing. It's actually mixing a little bit between the parents, and so the orangutan that you form is not going to be genetically identical to the orangutans that started out with, but it's going to be extremely similar. Okay, so any sort of small differences in the DNA of the offspring compared to the parents result in the diversity of that population. Okay, so now we talked about what constitutes an organism. these three factors that constitute an organism. Next, we want to kind of determine or show how living things differ from each other. Okay, so now we've said like how all living things are the same, so all of the similarities that are contained within living things. Now we want to begin to talk about how they differ, because we want to be able to differentiate between different species and different populations. Okay, so next we want to discuss how living things differ. The first term that comes to mind when talking about how things differ, how living things differ, is biodiversity. Another term that you guys might have heard being thrown around there. Biodiversity is simply the differences in life forms within a biosphere. Okay, so the differences in all life forms within a biosphere. Okay, so that's what biodiversity means. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. The diversity of bio, or the diversity of life. Okay, we want to be able to classify all of the biodiversity within a living or within a system. So we've come up with classification schemes. Okay, we want to classify how similar or how different two different animals or two different plants are. Okay, so this is called a classification scheme. And it starts out with something called a domain. Okay, there are three domains. The first is bacteria. The second is archaea. And the third is eukarya. Okay, these are the three domains within which all living life forms fit. Okay, so all life forms within our biosphere fit into these three domains. Okay, these two here are prokaryotic. Which means that they don't have what's called a nucleus to hold their DNA. Okay, so there's no nucleus to contain the DNA, and eukarya does have, does have a nucleus, okay? And furthermore, eukarya is segmented out into 4 different kingdoms. Okay, so the first kingdom is Animalia, or animals. The second kingdom is fungi. I'm just making that worse. Fungi. The third kingdom are plants. And the fourth kingdom, protists. Okay, I forgot that I was writing the non-Latin word for this, so we'll just call that animals instead of animalia. Okay, this is called the kingdom. Okay, the kingdom. And there are 4 kingdoms that eukarya separates out into: animals, fungi, plants, and protists. Okay, animals, hopefully you know what animals are. Animals are multi-celled consumers. Okay, this includes things like people, monkeys, dogs, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Fungi are mostly multicellular. Oops. Okay, and these include, these are composters, or I guess a better way to say this is decomposers. Okay, your typical mushroom is a fungi. Wow, look at that mushroom, guys. That's a really nice mushroom, right? Pretty good, eh? Okay, so this is your typical decomposer, typical fungi. Then you also have plants. Plants are multicelled. Okay, and these are photosynthetic producers. Okay, so you have plants, they have leaves that come off, and these leaves, that was kind of a messed up leaf, but you get the point. The leaves collect the sunlight and convert that sunlight into chemical energy. And then finally you have protists. Protists vary from single cell to multi-cell, so they can be single cell or multi-cell. And usually they're really, really tiny. Okay, so these include things called protistas. This is the actual name of the thing that looks like this. And they can be consumers or decomposers. Okay, so these are consumers over here. I'll write that out down at the bottom to be consistent. Okay, so those are the four kingdoms broken out. And then it can go even further from here. So each of these kingdoms are further classified into a bunch of different groups, and each of these groups help us distinguish the different types of life and what they actually are. Okay, and the process of classifying these different species into their own group is called taxonomy. Okay, taxonomy is a way to classify each separate species. Okay, with something called a taxa being the group in which a specific related life forms are placed. Okay, groups in which specific related life forms are placed. Okay, so that's what these taxa are called. There are 8 taxa in total. Okay, and these start with domain all the way up at the top. So the thing that we already discussed is a taxa, and then it goes kingdom, so domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and finally species, all the way down there at the very bottom. Okay, the higher taxa are up here, and the lower taxa are down here. And as you move down the taxa from higher to lower, you gain specificity. Okay, so you gain specificity as you move to lower taxa. Now there's a few mnemonic devices that help you remember all of these because it's kind of hard to remember them all. And some of my favorites are, do kings play chess on fine green silk? Oh, I can't fit it. Well, I'll just do this. Okay. Do kings play chess on fine green silk? And of course, each of these first letters corresponds to domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Okay. And there are a few others. I typically ask the class to go and find really interesting ones on the internet and then report back to the class. But since we're not having class, how about you guys just find really fun ones somewhere on the internet, and yeah, just send me an email. Send me an email, and if they're good enough, maybe I'll include them in the next session. Okay, so send me an email if you find any silly ones on the internet. I do love finding silly mnemonic devices. Okay. Oh, I have another one written here. This must be from last year. Okay, this one's pretty funny. Dumb kids prefer cheese over fried green spinach. Who would prefer cheese over fried green spinach? Not me. That's it. Okay, so with these taxa, okay, so within these 8 taxa, each species has all 8 names. Okay, so the full name. Wow, it's really bad. The full name of a species is all 8 names, or all 8, I guess I should say taxa. Okay. Linnaean names, so this is the full name. The Linnaean, Linnean name includes only genus and species. Okay, and the rest can kind of be inferred from the Linnaean name. If you're given the genus and the species, if you know enough about these taxa and their ordering, you can figure out exactly what the higher taxa are given the genus and the species. Okay, so let's work out exactly what the full name of a tiger would be. Okay, so a tiger is in the domain Eukarya. Okay, it is in the kingdom Animalia. It is in the phylum Chordata. Okay, and the phylum Chordata simply means that they have a central dorsal nerve cord. Okay, that's all Chordata means. Class is Mammalia. Mammals have mammary glands. Okay. Order, Carnivora. This means that they eat other animals, I guess. So they eat meat. And meat only. They only eat meat. Family, Felidae. Okay, this is cats. The genus is Panthera. Oops. Kind of like that awesome 80s band, which I'm sure you guys know all about. If you haven't, look it up on YouTube. It's pretty amazing. And, oh yeah, and Panthera means large cats. Okay, so cats is further divided into small cats and large cats. Panthera is the large variety, and the species is tigris. Okay, now this is the full name. All of these things together is the full name. We can shorten all of these down into the Linnaean name by just calling this Panthera tigris, or simply P. tigris is often enough. Okay, so this is typically the way that a Linnaean name is written out, either Panthera tigris or P. tigris. And if you can see that if you know enough about taxonomy, you can figure out exactly what the higher taxa are, given the fact that you know that P. tigris is the Linnaean name. Okay. So one of the things that taxonomy also allows us to do is, rather than just saying how everything is different, it allows us to kind of see how things are the same. Okay, so it turns out if you really start looking at taxonomy, you realize that more things are closely related than you would expect. Okay, more things are closely related than you would expect. Okay, so let's play a little game here. Let's write a domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and let's do two different species and see if you guys can guess what they are. Okay, so we'll start out. Both of them have eukarya. Okay, both of them are in the Plantae kingdom. That means that they're plants. Both of them are in the Magnoliophyta. Species, phylum. Both of them are in the Magnoliopsida. Class. Both of them are in the Rosales order. Okay. The genus for this one, this is where they start to differ, is Malus. And the genus for this one over here is Cannabis. Okay. So up until the order, they were the same. Now, when we go to family, the family changed a little bit. Wait a minute. The family, I'm off. Okay, let's rewrite these. Sorry, I'm kind of off. So domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There we go. Okay, so the family, they're slightly different. Oh, I skipped one. That's why. What am I doing here? I see. I skipped one. Okay, so sorry. That's not the right family. The family is Rosacea for this one. And for this one, it's Cannabacea. Okay, now we're back on track. Sorry about that, everybody. Then the genus for this one is Malus, and the genus for this one is Cannabis. The species for this one is Domesticus. And the species for this one is Sativa. Okay, so see if you guys can guess. Honestly, after I start talking about the family and the genus and the species, most people can guess what this one is. Most people cannot guess this one though. Okay, so pause the video here if you can guess, and guess. Otherwise, continue on and I'm just going to tell you. Okay, this side is the common apple. Okay, that's the apple tree. And this side is, of course, marijuana. Okay, marijuana and apple. You can see that they're fairly related, actually, all the way down to the order. They're both in the same order, Rosales order. But after you go into family, genus, and species, they start to deviate quite a bit. Okay. Interesting. You can do this for a bunch of different types of species as well. It's rather interesting to see when things start to diverge. Okay, so the work of categorizing all of the species of animals is done by people called zoologists. There you go, trying to think and talk at the same time. Okay, zoologists and botanists work to categorize the individual species into taxa. Okay, so zoologists work on animals and botanists work with plants. And they both work to try to figure out where animals and plants fit within these huge taxa classifications. Okay, and the reason why this is so important, or why it's very useful, is that all of this work helps us to rationalize the immense biodiversity of our planet. Okay, there is just an enormous amount of living things within our planet, and the only way that we can rationalize them and start to kind of categorize them together, or say that they're related or not, is by fitting them into these boxes. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, and yes, I'm going to pause here, and we will pick up from there in the next meeting. I believe that I've gone through enough. Let me just double check my notes here. Yeah, this is a good stopping point. We'll pick up with there next week, okay? So I hope you guys have a great weekend. Again, try to find some nice mnemonic devices to help you remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. And yeah, keep on keeping on. I'll talk to you next time. All right. Take care.